All right, this is episode 3 of the No Quinters podcast, and that's the name we're sticking with apparently, so we're just going to roll with it. It's Braden's idea, but I like the name. It's rolling off the tongue really nicely. So this is my guest, Matt. Matt was actually my coworker at Equinox when I worked at that gym. And for those of you guys that don't know, I worked there for about 2 years before I started my online coaching business. Matt was one of the guys I worked with. Matt, you want to introduce yourself real quick, man?
Yeah. So my name is Matt. I worked at Equinox with Evan for about a year or so. And we had some good times there.
We had some good times, but also some like interesting times and stressful times. But yeah, it was a fucking journey, man. And Matt's starting the online coaching business as well. So we're just gonna dive into all that stuff and just tell you guys about our experience and everything. But yeah, it's overall, Matt, just like tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into fitness and everything and what you're doing with your physique right now with your own fitness journey, and just, dive a little bit into that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So the main reason I got into fitness, like most people, wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I would say the biggest thing that I struggled with was confidence. When you're not confident, you can only go so far.
Right.
And I was always skinny. I went from skinny to skinny fat. You know how that goes. I'd put on a little bit of muscle because I would start eating more. And then when I would start working out, I'd only get so far because I didn't have a good diet. And then when I went to Equinox, obviously I met you.
Yeah.
That was really when my fitness journey kicked off.
Oh, got you.
Like that was when I probably became most consistent in the gym.
Right. Well, you kind of have to be at that point because it's like
absolutely.
you have clients that are looking at you almost as like, not maybe not like a father figure, but like, somebody that's like, sets a proper example. So it's like you have to walk that walk, when you're doing that.
Absolutely.
That's awesome, man. So like your fitness journey actually started when you like started personal training. So
I would say, so not fully. So I would say like I actually started working out, but not consistently, probably in like my high school days.
I got you.
This would be, hitting the gym 1 to 2 times a week, sometimes 3. Obviously not consistent enough for the goals that I wanted. And then once I got to Equinox, I'd say I was hitting the gym, 5, 6, 7 days a week. It would really depend on how hard I trained. Some days I would need more rest than others, but that was definitely where it kicked off the most.
I got you. Yeah, and I was the same way, man. It's like when I stepped into Equinox, it was almost like a more of a drive to work on my own physique and improve it because again, like people were looking up to you, right?
Absolutely.
It's like when you have that that physical representation of knowledge and experience, people are trusting what you're doing, right? And they're gonna follow your program and they're really gonna trust you down to a T.
Yeah.
So I think that's fucking awesome, man. And you mentioned like before, like you like weren't really as like locked in, but like now you are. So like, what are you going for right now with like your own physique?
So right now with my own physique personally, I'm not, I've done the bulking. I always like looking lean because, when I do bulk, I'm sure you can relate.
100%.
I hate putting on too much fat. That's just how I am. Some people don't mind it. Like, how bodybuilders they'll do a really hard bulk.
They'll go through it,
in their off season.
Yeah.
But then they'll also put on a lot of fat with it.
Yeah.
So with me, I try to do like a lean bulk in the off season. Like try to, not put on too much fat, but definitely put on some extra muscle.
Right. Because you need to do that at some point.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Correct. So then once it comes time to cutting, I'm not going to have to drop, 30 pounds per se. I'll only have to shed off, let's say, maybe 7 to 8 pounds.
Right.
Which is what I'm currently doing right now.
Exactly. And like the thing is, I went through that whole like period where it's like I did like the big long bulks and everything with, high dose of gear, like, 600, 700 grams of carbs and everything.
Yeah.
And it's like you go through that period where it's like for like 6 months, you just don't look great. Like, especially if you're using the gear too, like the high tests and the fucking everything else. It's like, okay, you're covered in acne, you're bloated, your face looks like a fucking moon. And it's like, but it's required to build that size. And when you want to maintain that and just like stay lean year round, like it's going to help with that. And it's also something you have to kind of go through.
And you have to think too, like when you start going higher, like with testosterone, for example, one of the biggest things, if you don't want acne, is maintaining your estrogen.
100%.
Like you definitely want to keep that in check. Normally, like when I first started testosterone, I noticed probably 3 months after, started getting acne all over my back, my arms, Then I immediately knew something was off, went to go get blood work. My estrogen was at like probably like a 70
Oh shit.
at the time, so it was
yeah.
it was pretty high.
Gotcha.
So then obviously I negated those side effects with drawing a blank.
So
here.
Aromacin?
Aromacin,
Okay, gotcha.
correct,
Yeah, I'm a fan of Aromacin. I like it a lot better.
Aromacin, like, obviously you need to keep an eye on it too because it can crash your estrogen pretty quick.
Right.
So I think I did that for, I want to say about 4 weeks. I was taking about 30 milligrams a week. Nothing like super high.
Okay.
But after about a month, I was well within normal range. I noticed about a month after that, my acne was slowly dissipating.
Okay. So for you, it was like an estrogen issue.
Correct.
I got you.
But it can be different for everybody.
Exactly.
Obviously.
One of the things that, that happened to me was like, I got like a really bad breakout probably about 4 years ago.
Yep.
And it wasn't necessarily an estrogen issue. It was more so like I had my cycle, I was ending my cycle. It was like 600 tests, some EQ. And then instead of just dropping to my cruise dose, I just like slowly tapered down. So I did like 600 1 week, then 500, then 400.
Yep.
And my hormones were just fluctuating and my blood levels were fluctuating so much where I just broke the fuck out. And it was like
Cystic?
deep cystic acne. If I showed you pictures, I'd be like, what the actual fuck? And it was like my skin's so pale, so it was so apparent there.
Let me ask you this. Did you have trouble sleeping?
Oh yeah, it's like I couldn't like roll over on my shoulder.
Pressure?
So, yep. It was the pain would keep me up. Eventually they put me on like a high dose of Accutane.
Gotcha.
But for you it's actually like an estrogen issue, which is interesting because for a lot of people like the estrogen response is so person dependent. Because like me, for example, I could run high dose tests with D-ball, which I've done before, take 0 AI and be fine. But for you, it's like if you tried that, you would probably end up getting gyno or just like break out like a fucking like a tomato. So that's interesting. So if you don't mind telling us, what are you taking right now and like what's like the whole like goal behind that?
So right now I'm currently taking 500 tests along with 50 Anavar.
Okay.
I do 500 tests per week, 50 Anavar per day. I've been doing that for probably about a month now.
Okay.
Obviously, before that, I did do a cycle for about 6 months. It was just 500 tests only.
Yeah.
And then I cycled off for about 3. I know normally everybody says you're supposed to, if you do 6 months on, do 6 months off.
Exactly.
But it also depends on your blood work too. Like if everything looks great, take half the time off, then you can go back on. But obviously everybody's different.
Right, because here's the thing, as like somebody wanting to like constantly improve your physique, I'd call myself a bodybuilder, I'd call you a bodybuilder too.
Yep.
We're trying to build a physique here
Correct.
and make the best version of ourselves. You don't want to be coming off so much. It's like you want to be staying on.
Keep making progress,
exactly, and it's like that's just the reality of things, right? Bodybuilders don't like to come off steroids because when you do that, you're going to temporarily regress.
Correct.
So, to do everything in your power, like with blood work, like you said, making sure you're good with that, if your bloods look okay, your blood pressure's fine, and you're making good progress and you feel good, there shouldn't be so much of a reason to come off completely, so I 100% get that, man. But yeah, man, because you're looking like pretty lean right now, which is good. So you like
I
the
definitely
Anavar?
have seen a drastic change that I can say for sure. Especially not just physique wise, also energy.
Oh, 100%.
By far, like after I started testosterone, I've never felt better. Way more energy. Don't get fatigued during the day.
It's a 9-day difference.
It's fantastic.
It's a 9-day difference. It's like a cheat code in life.
Yep.
It's pretty crazy. People hate to hear that too. They're like, oh, you can just take testosterone and be vital all the time and have this high energy. I'm like, yeah, pretty much.
Let me ask you this too. So, do you feel more? How should I put this? More confident. Do you feel more confident?
Oh, yeah.
Like almost in every aspect of life?
100%.
Would you say?
So when I first started taking testosterone, I've told people the story before. So I started when I was 21 years old. So back when I was in I was in college, I was in a fraternity.
Yep.
And basically before I started, I had I think I got my blood work checked. It was like about 500 nanograms per deciliter for testosterone, which is not high for a 21-year-old. So I was like almost like I just felt like a bitch before. Like I just felt like so like wimpy and just like not super assertive and just like not really like like confident in social situations. But when I took that first shot of testosterone, after a couple months of just continuing, taking about 250 milligrams per week, like it was a night and day difference, man. Like
absolutely.
More work ethic, more drive, more assertiveness. I'd actually had a backbone. Instead of just like letting people kind of walk all over me. You probably felt the same way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what would you say to people who have this? This is probably a very common question.
Yeah.
So the people who say, how important is it to get blood work?
Yeah.
And obviously some people don't want to do that because, you know, it costs money.
Right.
But I tell a lot of people, you know, bodybuilding isn't cheap
Exactly.
whatsoever. And that comes with the food, the gear, the blood work, everything. What would you tell people?
It comes with a cost, man. Like, you know, so it's just part of your responsibility as somebody using steroids to check up on that stuff, right? I mean, to be completely honest, you know, I would say the blood pressure is going to be more important than the actual blood work itself, because I mean, obviously you're going to do the two, you're going to check up on the two, but the blood work, it's just a snapshot of what's going on in, you know, at the current time. So when you're taking a cycle, no shit, your blood work's going to look bad, right? Is that going to stop you from continuing it? Let's be honest, probably not. Yep. But you know, blood pressure is something that you can check up on every day, and it's a relatively easy fix. So I say that's arguably more important. But again, just like it's also just cool to see like what these things are doing to your body, as almost like data you can keep on yourself.
Yep.
So you know, you take Trenbolone for example, and looks like my LDL is high as shit and my HDL is tanked. Interesting. Okay, maybe I shouldn't take 500 milligrams of Tren, right? So yeah, it's something cool. But you haven't experimented with anything besides Test and Anavar yet? Just no, those two?
Those are the two I've experimented with so far.
Because I remember when we worked at Equinox together, I like wrote you down like a cycle to do, and like I didn't know your goals at the time. I didn't know you wanted to kind of achieve like the kind of like David Lay like, you know, aesthetic look. So I was giving you like a bodybuilder cycle. I think it ended off as like a gram of test with like 500 EQ or something, like a cycle I would take.
And I'm 100% going to bring this up too. We talked about it earlier. It's funny because back when we did that, you know, I wanted to get into it. You know, I came to you the next day. I was like, hey, Evan, you know, I pinned my quad. My quad's so sore. My quad was sore for probably 2 weeks. Then, you know, Evan came over to me. He's like, why the fuck did you pin your quads?
Exactly. I should have prefaced that. Like, I've seen so many bad quad injections.
Yeah.
And it's like, even if you don't get it the first couple times, something is going to happen if you just keep injecting your quads.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many fucking nerve endings there. Like, you know, you can like hit a fucking like part of your quad, the whole thing's going to twitch.
Yep.
I've seen, you know, massive inflammation responses from doing that. And you just avoid all that just by just going somewhere else.
Correct.
Like, it's gonna be less painful too. Like, there's no reason to do it.
It's funny too, because that one experience, as I told you, ruined it for me completely. Because my quad was sore for over 2 weeks.
So you mentioned you just like came off after, like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore.
I did that one injection, never did it again. Then obviously fast forward to today. Here I am.
That's so
500
funny.
tests, 50 anabar.
That's so funny.
Feel great. You know, my pumps in the gym are fantastic. My strength is going through the roof. And like I said, I feel a lot better.
That's awesome, man. And like I was telling you about this before, you know, for your goals, right? You know, you want that kind of like aesthetic, muscular physique. You don't want to look like, you know, a 250-pound bodybuilder. So, you know, you don't need so much gear to get there. That's what a lot of people don't understand. It's like when I talk about my content and everything, you know, I talk about, you know, using the most amount of gear that you can tolerate before it gets like, you know, bad where you're getting side effects, you feel like shit and everything like that. But let's be realistic and say, you know, you're not going to grow, you know, a lot of muscle and get this really good physique taking like 200 milligrams of test, right? So there needs to be a middle ground. But for you, it's like, you're not trying to be 250 pounds. You can ride out that 500 test, 50 anavar and grow optimally, right? Have good workout performance, stay lean, stay, you know, good looking and everything.
Like if I actually had to put someone into perspective for the physique that I'm looking for personally, I'd say the best example of that would probably be, and I'm talking long term, like I'm talking like within the next like five years, I would probably say Bradley Martin.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So like Bradley Martin right now, or Bradley Martin like when he was in his peak?
When I would say Bradley Martin right now, but you've seen Bradley Martin too, like when he's a lot leaner.
Yeah.
That's
a good
the
look
that I'm going
It's
for.
a solid look, yeah.
Because, you know, he's tall too, like he has my similar frame. Yeah. Like ideally, like the weight that I would like to be at is 6'4", 250.
Right. That makes sense. So, you know, we're just gonna try to like design you a cycle for that right now. I guess I think that'll be funny. So we have to understand, I mean, to get to that size, you know, there needs to be like at least like, you know, one elongated, you know, growing period, bulking period. It's just something you have to do if you want to gain that much tissue. You have to push your calories up to some extent. So, I mean, that's going to need to happen. There might be a time where your body fat needs to get a little bit out of range or higher than you'd like it to. But again, it's going to pay off, right? But to even grow that size to begin with, I mean, you're probably going to have to push the doses up a little bit.
Absolutely.
You know?
That's a given.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you're going to ride that out for the rest of your life. But like once you have that size, you can use less gear to maintain it. But at some point, you're probably gonna have to push your tests up, 750,
Yep.
maybe 1,000 if you need it. Adding in some other compounds like other injectables like Primobolan, maybe, EQ, something like that. Just to have the hormonal environment to build that size in the first place, right?
And I would definitely, bringing up Primobolan, I would
Yeah.
definitely put that as a similar category with Test and Anavar. I would definitely say that's
Oh,
more
yeah.
of a, I don't want to say beginner compound, but it's more of a, you get less side effects. with it.
Exactly. So,
So-
I can't tell you how many of my clients right now are literally on Test, Primo, and Anavar.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm giving them like a cookie cutter cycle. It's because this shit fucking works.
Correct.
It's like you have the least side effects, least ramifications in your health. You can push them up relatively high and get really, really good effects. So I mean, I'm on
You have to
Primobolan
think,
now. It's
too,
like I feel great.
Primobolan also helps with, obviously everybody's worried about getting gyno.
Right.
As well once they push their test higher. If I'm correct, I mean, from what I've seen, Primobolan it doesn't act as an aromatase inhibitor, but it doesn't aromatize like testosterone does.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it can help just like lower systemic estrogen like a
Yep.
little bit, but it's like obviously if you have issues that you need to take an AI, you're not going to use Primo as the sole AI.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's why I run it, man. Like I feel amazing on it. It's a great drug. It's expensive, and I don't know if you heard
That
there's
for sure.
There's like a shortage of it right now, so now it's even
Oh, is
more.
there really?
Yeah, there's like I guess like the raws from China, they got like there's some like they got like banned or something like that, or like they got outlawed. So to get the raws are like now extremely hard. So they jacked the price of Primo up by like fucking $50 a vial. So instead of it being 100, now it's like 150. It's
150 now?
it's probably going to be like off the market or faked, and I would say in 6 months or something.
And see, like, this is another thing too that most people need to realize. From what I've seen, all the gear that has less side effects tends to be more expensive.
There's a big
Because,
demand for it.
You pay for what you get.
Exactly.
And Primo, like you just said, $150 a vial.
Yeah.
You look at testosterone, it's like $35, $40
Exactly.
a vial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sometimes even like 25.
Yeah, depending on where you get it,
exactly,
you know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting. Like Primobolan, Anavar. I'm trying to think. Even I don't know if you heard of like DHB. That can get pretty pricey too because it's exotic and it's hard to source.
And then even growth hormone, which obviously growth hormone
Right.
also tends to be fake too. A lot of people need to watch out for that as
Right.
well. But that's another one that's definitely up there in price.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, there's a big kind of like dichotomy or between like pharma grade growth hormone and generic growth hormone.
Yeah.
So people like to say they're like the same drug, and they're really not. Because like again, you get what you pay for. So
Absolutely.
like I've seen like just from like working with so many people that take generics, I've seen way more side effects with people that take the generics. So like more water retention, more blood pressure issues, more like carpal tunnel. I've seen that pretty much across the board with people taking generics. But when they switch to a pharmaceutical grade growth hormone like Serostim or Genotropin, those side effects become a lot less. They actually take less of the growth hormone and get the same effect, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So like, for example, 10 IUs of a generic, like let's say Blacktop, for example, is probably going to be about the same firepower as 3 to 4 IUs of like a Serostim or Genotropin. It's just, again, it's pricey. $600 a month to fucking do that.
Which again, so that's what I mean. Like bodybuilding,
It
isn't
expense,
cheap.
yeah.
Especially, I mean, it's cheaper if you don't want to do it the safe way, but I would never recommend that to anybody.
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
100% need to track your bloods.
Right.
You need to take your blood pressure. You need to get all your supporting supplements as well, which also isn't cheap.
Right.
I mean, most people don't realize like once you hop on, you need to realize what you're going to need to take to keep you
Right.
healthy.
Like you have to realize like what you're getting yourself into, and a lot of people don't understand that. So before I even got on gear, I did extensive research on what I was doing. I knew exactly what to do for health supplements, for like blood panels, even though I didn't really get blood work for like 2 years after I started. But I knew what I was getting myself into, how to manage side effects, and I mean it's not a light decision.
Let me ask you this: how long were you doing research for before you started?
I would say at least a year.
Yeah.
At least a year, if not more. And just like that research was basically just, it wasn't me like perusing through fucking research papers. It was like, literally just like, watching podcasts of guys that have have experience with it, have been doing it. More plates, more dates, obviously, was a big inspiration. But yeah, it's just like you have to really know what you're getting yourself into. Yeah. That's all. Yeah, man. So basically, you worked at Equinox for about a year, and I want to dive into that because this is basically going to be like the fucking Equinox roast session right here. So we're not shit on everybody. But yeah, so basically, tell me first like how you got into it and like what your experience was like, starting off and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, like my biggest passion is fitness, just like you.
Of course.
Same exact thing. I got into Equinox originally because, first off, I saw multiple listings on Indeed. I wanted to be a personal trainer because it was my passion.
Yeah.
A couple different Equinoxes reached out to me. I don't know why. Like I got one from like New York, and I was like, near New York.
Yeah.
I got a couple different locations that reached out to me. Obviously, Chestnut Hill did reach out to me at one point. And I also applied like before that, so they must have saw my resume like from back then,
right? Which
is what I assume. And shockingly enough, it said from 100, no joke, it said from $100,000 a year on the application.
Yeah.
So my eyes lit up. I'm like, damn, like I can just go there and make $100,000 a year. It sounds too good to be true, but I'll give it a shot. Why not? So I went in there, obviously. I went through the same thing as you. I went through the whole onboarding process, which was very long. I'm sure you remember it.
100%.
It was a lot of work for sure. Once I got started, I did ramp up fairly quick. I had the right people training me at one point. But what got on my nerves quick was, like we mentioned this earlier, is how they would take basically half of what your paycheck is.
Right.
So they would charge. How did it work again? It was like tier 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, so I don't think so. They didn't have tier 1 or 2 when we trained. I think when we started, we were like instantly tier 3.
Yeah.
But it was like the higher tier you were, like the more commission you would get, or the more you'd have to charge per session.
Yeah.
And then the more sessions you do per week, the bigger your commission was. So there are like certain thresholds. So for example, if you're doing 60 sessions in a pay period, you would get like $72 per session or something like that.
And then
that could be wrong, but
you would get a bonus at certain points, right? If you do a certain amount of sessions in a month.
Exactly. Yeah, it was something like that. But like the pay structure was formulated like the more you would work, essentially the more you would get, the more your commission would be, right?
Exactly.
And that's how they get you to just keep onboarding more clients, closing more packages, and everything like that, which. It became, I'm sure you realize, the more sessions you would do, the more you'd just be spending time in that building on your feet, stressing yourself out and everything.
A perfect example of spending time in that building, let's say you have a day where you only have 2 sessions. You'll have one at,
I know exactly what you're about to say, but say it.
So you'll have one at 9 a.m.
Yep.
And then your next session will be at 6 p.m.
The biggest fucking downfall of that place was just you were a slave to your clients' schedules.
Absolutely.
And if you they say, oh yeah, you can try to fill like your gaps in between with doing more prospecting with like people that work like in later in the day, so you can fill the middle of the day spots. But it never worked out like that.
No,
so
never.
You would be, like you said, you'd have a couple sessions in the morning, a couple sessions in the evening, and then have this big block throughout the day, but it's not enough time to go home. So you're basically staying in that building essentially for free, not doing anything while you're waiting. Not getting paid either. Yep. And sure, you could do more business building, more calls, more event tables, whatever, but it was insane.
And then I'll say the issue, this as well,
Yeah.
I'll say the issue with that. So the time that you want to spend building your business there to fill your gap,
right?
That only goes so far because we both know how many trainers would be in that gym.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So we talked about this multiple times while we were there.
Yeah.
I came in there were probably, I'd say probably like 20 trainers.
Yeah.
When I came there, and we would always joke about it. Like consistently.
Yeah.
And we'd be like, wow, like there's like, there's 21, 22 trainers here. And then we'd laugh about it. And then 3 weeks later, they'd hire 2 more.
Right.
And we'd be like, what the fuck?
Exactly.
We'd be like in shock.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it was insane because the turnaround rate was just so fucking high there.
Yep.
Because like people would join and they'd be like, well, this is fucking stupid. I'm just gonna leave after a couple weeks.
We saw that happen multiple times. Like
exactly.
People would come right in.
They come
like
and go.
All the
like
new
a revolving
hires,
door.
They'd have such high expectations.
Right.
They wouldn't make any money for the first whatever, 4 to 6 weeks.
Right.
And then they leave because they can't do it anymore. You know
Exactly.
what I mean?
And like, here's the thing. So yes, you can make a decent amount of money at Equinox.
Yeah.
And like the more you'd work there, the more you get paid. So if you put in the hours, you could make a decent salary there per month. We were probably making, at least me at most, I was making maybe $6,000 a month, which I mean, it isn't even high, but like there was a ceiling there. That was the problem. Yeah. So for those of you guys that don't know, we had a trainer there. I won't say his name, but he, we know, you know what I'm about to say. So he was working probably like 12-hour days, just like straight session after session after session. And he'd been there for like 10 years or something. And I mean, his schedule is absolutely crazy. We were talking about this before. He'd literally go to the locker room in between clients, grab a fucking granola bar, eat it in 5 seconds, go out to his next client. And there's
no time to himself.
Zero time to himself, zero freedom. And that was the ceiling. And I think he was making, somewhere like 9 or 10K a month. But there's nowhere to, like, where are you going to go from there? That's the thing. You're going to work 16 hours? You can't. Exactly.
That's like his hours were maxed out.
Right.
And his pay was maxed out, obviously, because you physically can't work any more hours.
Exactly.
And it would be, I mean, yeah, you're making decent money at the time.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what's worth more, your paycheck or your time?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's insane. It's insane. But I mean, I have like tremendous respect for that guy because he put up with it for like 10 years or something.
He's a great guy.
I think he's still there too. Actually, I think I saw him the other day. So
really?
yeah, I saw him in the Starbucks. But yeah, I mean, man, there's nowhere to go from there. And when I realized that, I'd been there for about 2 years at that point, like almost 2 years. And like we were saying before, the schedule is just so jumbled up. I was a slave to my clients' schedules, and I was just stressing myself out in that building. I'm like, there's nowhere to go from here, man. Like, it's just like I'm just running myself into the ground. Yeah. I'm sure you realize the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting. But I mean, in terms of like, because what you're doing right now, you're getting into online coaching, which is fucking fantastic.
And the biggest reason is, fitness is my biggest passion.
Exactly.
I love helping people. That's why I became a personal trainer to begin with.
Same here.
I like changing lives. I enjoyed changing my own life.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, you can only do so much when you don't have time to yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So it's like you almost like, and I got into it for the same reasons, right? I love helping people. I have a lot of expertise in building a physique. And I want to transfer that knowledge on other people and help them change their lives. And when it comes to a certain point, it's like you're doing so much and you're stressing yourself so much with a job like that, you almost lose a love for it. And that's kind of what I realized. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, 100%, man. But you're getting online coaching now, which is fantastic. So like, did you say like Equinox would maybe build some of those skills to like help you with that and everything, at least from the business building aspect?
I would 100% say Equinox absolutely has the assets to teach you the skills that you need.
Right. We're not denying that at all. Yeah.
Absolutely. So they have, in my experience, and I'm sure in your experience too, they have a great training program that they put you through to teach you how to build your business.
Right.
I would 100% agree with that. And they're always open to, giving you extra help if you need it. If you want to learn a little bit more, they were always open about that. And it's nice that they can give you the experience to apply to online coaching as well. So I would definitely say that we both got something from that experience.
100%.
Absolutely.
Because like, I'm sure when you got there, like you thought like, okay, I'm at Equinox right now. This is the end all be all of personal training, right?
Yep.
But then when you realize it, it's like, well, shit, this is just the bottom of the barrel, and there's so much more potential, right? So, but 100%, man, like it's a good stepping stone because they teach you how to build a business essentially within a business, and then you can apply that to your own business because now you have those skills.
So I would say that I went into Equinox with, I'd say my expectations were far too high. That's how I would describe it. Yeah. So I walked in there, like I told you, I mean, the offer that I saw on Indeed just wasn't accurate whatsoever. Yeah. So
if you guys are planning on applying to Equinox, don't listen to the fucking recruiters. Don't. You're not going to make $100K.
No. And if you do, you're not going to have any time to yourself.
Exactly, Good luck.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I said, go on. Yeah.
But I would say that the biggest thing that Equinox taught me was consistency. Like what you put in 100%. Is 100% what you're going to get out.
Yeah.
And that goes for everything in life, whether it's your job, whether it's the gym, whether it's just your mentality in general, waking up every day. Whatever you put in is what you're gonna get out.
Right.
100%.
It taught you how to grind,
Yes.
for sure. Because like
Absolutely.
you remember that ramping period when we first started. So, you know, they pushed you to, you know, always be doing something relating to business building. And, you know, they grill you if you didn't do it, which is, I mean, I think that's good, right? You know, they're teaching you to hold yourself accountable to, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for getting your own clients and everything. But, you know, that process was just, it was a grind, man. You were doing event tables, you know, every single day. You were doing, you know, phone calls every day, you know, prospecting while, you know, still simultaneously training your clients that you're onboarding.
Yep.
So it just taught you to just like fucking like grit your ass and just keep going.
And occasionally it would be kind of tough too,
Yeah.
because obviously we would have multiple times where we would do a table with like one of our friends.
Right,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And let's say you know, sometimes you'll get a lot of leads some days, and some
Right.
days you'll only get like one. Then at the end of the day, like, you know, once you're done with the table, you're like, all right, how are we gonna break these up?
Right.
Like you kind of got to figure it out.
Exactly.
Like you don't want to you don't want to be you don't want to be unfair to each other. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And like you'll know usually by the conversations which leads are gonna go somewhere,
Right.
and which leads aren't. And like you don't want to break your relationship with whoever you're doing the table with,
Right.
Because that's another thing that I noticed that kind of sucked. You kind of just have to, you know, break them apart, figure out who's gonna
Right.
get which lead.
Right. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you know, yes, like it wasn't a super competitive environment there, but at the end of the day, you're still trying to, you know, build your own business and make your own
Absolutely.
living. But that's why I think I told you one of the things about the tables when we were working at Equinox was like you want to find somebody that you work really well with, right? So when you're doing an event table, you don't want to work with somebody that's the complete opposite of your training style and your personality, because there's going to be friction between you two. But you know, that's why I worked with, you know, Nick, and I hope he's watching this right now because he's gonna, you know, go places. Dude's a fucking hardworking kid. But that we paired well together. We meshed really well together. And every time we do those tables, it would just be like, you know, it'd just be so smooth. There'd be no friction. It'd be like, okay, these are some leads for you. Here's some leads for me. And we're just gonna, you know, kind of.
And
go
you
our
guys
way.
got along really well too.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd say you guys were definitely a great duo.
Yeah.
And you guys were very consistent with the tables too, which definitely helped both your business a lot.
Oh, 100%, yeah. I mean, that was the thing, like you're saying, this, the consistency with the business building. That's what it taught me.
Absolutely.
But yeah, man, that's really good. So essentially, so you left after about a year,
It was
right?
about a year.
Just
Yep.
okay. So what made you make that decision? Like what was going through your head when that
So
happened?
when I was at Equinox, my income was fluctuating.
Okay.
It was never consistent, which would aggravate me beyond belief.
Right.
So some months I would make 4,000, then I would have a really good month and I'd make like 7, then I'd go right back down to like 4. Another
Right.
month I'd have like 3. It was just all out of whack, all up and down. Would you say you were making $6K a month pretty consistently?
It wasn't consistent. No,
It wasn't
there's some
consistent,
months.
okay.
I would say 6K was a good month.
Yeah.
But most months it was like 4 to 5K.
Gotcha.
Some months even less, especially when I first started. But yeah, I 100% get that, like the fluctuating income and not so much like actual security, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
got you.
then I decided to leave after a year because I was just sick of the fluctuations
Right.
with the income, because obviously if something's not consistent, you don't really want to stick with it anymore. And at the time, I was also managing a family-run business as well.
Right.
So
Okay, so you had a lot on your plate, yeah.
I left to go do that because I knew I was going to be making way more money than I was at Equinox, and I
Right.
was losing some time from that business working at Equinox.
Right.
And then obviously that's consistent income, so that's what caused me to break away from Equinox at
Right.
the time.
That makes sense because like you only have like so many resources in terms of like time and energy. So if you want to go all in on something, you need to put all of your time and all of your energy and focus into that.
Absolutely.
So if you're working at Equinox while simultaneously trying to run another business, it's like, well, all of your eggs are like scattered all over the place instead of in one basket.
That was the problem.
So you're stressing yourself out. You're putting time and effort in this thing that's not really getting you to where you want to be. And then it's taken away from the thing that actually matters, which at the time was your business, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
Same for me. Yeah.
Another thing too was so I continued with personal training after Equinox as
Right.
well. But what I did, you're probably gonna laugh when I
Yeah.
say this. So I'm really into cars. Cars
Yeah.
are probably my second biggest
Yeah.
hobby after fitness. Me, my father,
yeah.
a lot of my friends.
I'm not laughing at that. I'm getting in the cars myself. So.
Anyways, I would, no joke, I would go to car shows and I would leave homemade business cards on people's cars.
Yeah.
Just, I felt weird doing it. I didn't know if people were watching me do it, but I'd put it right on the windshield. It'd have all my information, personal trainer, if you're looking for one, here's my number. And believe it or not, it was slowly working. Like, so I was actually finding some people from it. I'd get leads here and there, and obviously you can charge what you want.
Right, of course.
So, I was doing pretty well. I'd actually say that I was probably doing almost as well as Equinox just doing that.
That's crazy.
Which was actually great.
So you freed up like probably more than half of your time, and now you're making like the same amount. Yeah.
And it was nice because that would only be like me like on weekends.
Right.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'd be going to car shows or just be going to random parking lots, putting cards on a bunch of people's cars.
Yeah.
And I was actually getting leads from it. Like, it was nice. It was a pretty, I'd honestly, I'd say it was like a pretty good side gig because I was still full time with like the business at the time. Right. But it was good extra income. I was still able to do what I loved. So it was nice.
Yeah. No, that's good, man. That's good. I mean, like what you were saying before about like, you don't necessarily want to be putting your time into something that doesn't exactly matter. I mean, it's like I came to that same realization, right? So like, obviously, you had a little bit of a different situation because you were running another business along with working at Equinox. Yep. I was just putting all of my eggs into one basket with Equinox. So the decision I had to make was, okay, if I'm going to be doing this online coaching thing, I don't want to be fucking twiddling my dick in my hand doing like fucking Equinox and the online business. I have to just do one or the other. Otherwise, it's never going to work, And that's what I'm hearing you're trying to get out of this, which I think is fucking fantastic, man.
And the biggest thing too is like I would tell anyone who's watching this, and I'm sure you would too, is always follow what you love. No matter what, always do what you love, and if you put enough into it, you're gonna get the best expectation that you can possibly get out of it.
Exactly.
What you put in is what you're gonna get out.
Exactly, man. And listen, it's like you enjoy getting people in shape. You're obviously clearly knowledgeable on it because you have a good physique and you've built it from ground zero. Yep. So you can now apply that knowledge to other people, and it's something you actually enjoy doing. Like me, for example, it's like anytime I'm writing like, a client program and everything, obviously I'm working with a lot of people and, it can get, pretty time consuming from time to time, but it's like, I'm loving every second of it, None of this feels like work at all,
And that's what you want.
Yeah.
That's one of the pros of doing something that you love.
Exactly. Exactly, man. So what would you say like is your almost like ideal, like client base right now? Because you're just getting into this. Yeah. So like, what would you say is your like your ideal like customer persona, like somebody like who you would want to train?
Are we talking? Describe that in a better term for me.
Yeah. So like for example, like so I work with people who they go to the gym, they use steroids, and they want to improve their physique and learn how to use steroids properly, and almost look like a bodybuilder, but just kind of live life like that and not necessarily compete. Yeah. So it's a very niche and specific client persona that I'm looking for with people, because these are the people I like to train. I'm knowledgeable of training them, and like it's like they're not going to be like a pain in the ass client for me, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So for you, like, what does that person look like?
So I 100% would lean towards whoever's looking to not become. When I say bodybuilder, I don't necessarily mean step on stage. Like, I don't consider bodybuilder step on stage 24/7.
Right.
A lot of people do, because a lot of people, when they hear the word bodybuilder, they think, oh, stage ready, stepping on stage, giant guys or 280 plus pounds. Of course, you know what I'm saying? But I would say anyone who wants to be, a lot more muscular, anyone who wants to get lean, lose body fat, I would steer clear of like more of like the athletic portion, like people who are looking to be like more explosive, because that's not really my niche.
It's not mine either. Yeah.
If you wanna, have a better physique, become more muscular, lose fat, then those are the people that I'm looking for.
Okay.
Personally.
Got you. So more just like somebody that wants to achieve like more of like a high level physique.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. Any like specific, like, would you like just work with like men? Would it be like women as well? Like, because like if you're really going to get into this, you really have to dive into that like specific, niche of clients you want to work with.
So me personally, I would 100% aim towards just men. Okay. Just because I believe that I can help them a lot more. That's just me being 100% honest. And women tend to have a lot of different goals than men.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of women out there who want to be bodybuilders. They want to get a lot more muscular.
Right.
Just like most guys do. You know what I
Right.
mean? But they're a lot harder to come by. Would I be open to doing it? Like if they needed my help, absolutely.
Right.
But I would say I specialize a lot more in men.
That makes sense. And now you have almost like the freedom to choose who you want to work with.
Correct.
Right. Because, you know, you have a plethora of people that, you know, that you can work with, as opposed to at Equinox, you were just limited to the people that were coming in the gym.
Very true.
Right. So you probably had like a whole range of just like general population people you were working with.
So,
and like probably some of them were good, but some of them were probably like pain in the ass, right?
I came across a lot of people that were hard to work with, not only just because they didn't want to do certain things that I was trying to tell them to do. I would actually get into arguments here and there. Like they would argue with me, but like I would try. Obviously, I wouldn't argue back. I'd be nice about it. I'd be like, hey, man, you know, you're paying me to help you. I want to help you achieve your goals, but like if you're not going to do what I'm trying to program for you, we're not really going to get anywhere. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I want to work with people who are 100% motivated. They have nothing but drive and discipline. You know, they want to build muscle, get lean. Those are the two biggest categories that I would put myself in. Whoever wants to build muscle and get lean.
Right. Because like, you know, if you're working with somebody and there's like friction between, you know, your training style and what they want, like that client, that person is never going to get to their goal physique working with you, right? You know, it's just not going to happen. So I had the same experience, right? I was working with a lot of guys who were, you know, like especially men who were like really driven. They wanted to, you know, improve their physique to like a really high level, and they're willing to do whatever it takes. And then I had the opposite end of the spectrum of just like general population people, like, you know, that would go out and drink on the weekends, have nice dinners, not follow any of the outside advice I would give them besides the in-person training session for an hour, and they would never make progress because there was that friction there.
How would you say how would you say your average client's diet was?
Like
would they
Equinox,
stick to it? Would they not stick to it and then complain, hey, I'm making no progress?
Well, here's the thing, and this is the problem with Equinox. Because we weren't registered dietitians, we technically couldn't write a diet, but I fucking did it anyways because I didn't want to have that person waste their progress. So, you know, if they asked me for nutrition advice, I would basically write them a diet program. And I would say, hey, like, you know, go follow this, you know, like try to adhere to it at least like 75%. Because, you know, for general population, you can't expect them to adhere 100%. So, okay, it's like follow this to 75%. And they would make really good progress. Their gym performance would increase. They're actually seeing like the proper results, because if you're just doing the hour-long session and nothing else outside of it, it's all going to go to waste, right?
Absolutely.
And it's like almost like the entrapment that we had with these people. It's like they never make progress, so we're doing the other shit outside of the gym, so they keep coming back.
And like I'll be honest too. So I actually, what you just said, I did the same exact thing.
Right.
Because I would get asked for nutrition advice.
Right.
And, you know, I can't. It's my job to help you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? That's why I'm here. You're paying me to help you, so that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
And obviously, you know, at Equinox, we weren't diet professionals, so we couldn't write a diet plan.
I didn't give
like,
a fuck.
If someone, if someone asks me, hey, like, you know, do you have any diet recommendations? I'm not just going to say, oh, go eat chicken and rice.
Like what does that even mean to somebody?
Like nothing. Like, you're not. You know, you could eat anything. You could eat fried chicken. You can eat. You can eat fried rice. Like, that could mean anything.
You could dump olive oil on it and just like make it fucking 700 calories.
Saying. Like the only way you're gonna understand the proper diet is if I write you a diet plan, not just give you recommendations.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And
you need to have something to follow.
Right. No, and I think that's why you're going to be successful at this online coaching business, because you were willing to go like against the grain to like do something that was going to genuinely help that person. Because like I would do the same thing. It's like, you know, I'm not gonna say names, but managers would be like, you know, you can give them advice, but don't actually write a diet plan for them. I'd be like, fuck this. Like, I want to help this person. Like, I'll literally like write a spreadsheet for them, print it out, and be like, go follow this. Because I want to add that person to make improvements. That's why I'm there. It's why I'm there. It's insane, man. We could go on for fucking hours about this shit. But like literally, you know, one of the things I really noticed when I worked at Equinox was, you know, like obviously you were in shape. I was in shape. You know, a lot of the other top trainers were in shape. and there was a correlation between their success there and them being in shape.
Yeah.
And then the trainers that were not necessarily in the best shape, like you would look at them and be like, does this person even go to the gym? Their businesses would not be as proficient or as, you know, as successful.
Well, your physique says a lot.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it's a lot different if you see someone who looks like a bodybuilder versus if you see someone who just looks average.
Right.
Who do you think is going to be able to help you reach your goals more? I mean,
Exactly.
at that point, it's very obvious. You're going to go with the person who looks very fit because they obviously, you can tell right off the bat, if you look at someone,
Right.
they obviously know what they're doing because they're in really good shape.
You're a walking representation of your knowledge, right?
Absolutely.
And there's a clear difference, and not only in like how we looked as trainers, but the actual clients looked, right? Because you know, I'm sure your clients were making insane progress.
Yeah.
My clients were making insane progress. You know, other trainers that were in good shape, their clients making tremendous progress. Other trainers, like their clients just kept staying the same. Like, you know, they were just, you know, not losing fat. Like they just looked the same year after year. And it was like, you're paying this fucking person. Like it should raise some red flags that you're not making any progress here, right?
And I actually have one pretty funny but really great client story.
Yeah.
I had one client who I worked with for about half my time at Equinox. It was about 6 months.
Yeah.
Her goal in 1 year was to lose 50 pounds.
Okay.
Which is an attainable
doable.
goal if
Doable.
you have a very strict diet and a great training plan. She worked with me for 6 months and she dropped like 20 pounds.
Okay.
Which is great.
Still good.
Which is still great. You know, that's only about half the time.
Right.
Because she actually didn't want to continue after that, just because it got a little too expensive for her, and which I get. I totally understand.
Yeah.
But she got out of it like what she expected. Like once we were done, she's like, I feel fantastic.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And when I first met her, she was very antsy. She's like, I don't think I'm gonna be able to lose any weight. I've been trying to lose weight for quite some time. I've been going to the gym by myself for years now and I haven't made any progress. She's like, I'm thinking about taking Ozempic. I'm like, do not take Ozempic.
Exactly.
I'm like, I promise you, if we work together, I will help you reach those goals.
Yeah.
And like, the more I talked to her, she trusted me, and I got her to where she wanted to be. You know, she dropped 20 pounds. She worked with me for 6 months, and you know, from there on, she had a great program. And I'm sure now she 100% achieved that goal. I'm definitely very confident.
Because keep in mind, like obviously it doesn't matter that she, you know, discontinued working with you. What matters is you literally gave her the skills that she needed to eventually do this on your own, right?
Yep.
Because here's the thing, you know, as coaches, it's like our job is not to hold your hand for the rest of your life. It's literally to empower that person and teach them the skills they need to eventually do this on their own, right?
Yep.
We're not babysitters, right? We're literally not babysitters. So, you know, and one of the things I really saw that was, you know, not super, you know, pleasing at Equinox was like a lot of these other trainers would like withhold secrets, and they would just like hold things back and not really teach the person the skills. And they're almost like, you know, entrapping them and making them almost dependent on that trainer, right? So the person wasn't making progress. The trainer wasn't giving them any advice for what to do outside of the hour-long session. And they would just keep coming, keep not making progress, and they would be trapped, right? And it would be dependent on the trainer.
So what I would do personally is 2 days. Let's say I had a client for 3 times a week, for example. Obviously, we're not going to be working together 2 days during that week. You know, 5. It really depends on like how much they work out in general.
Right.
But like, let's say we work together 3 days, and they go to the gym 5 days a week. On those 2 days that they're not with me, I'd always give them a program to do by themselves.
Yep.
So they'd basically get double what they pay for.
Same
but
here.
like that's what I expect them to do, because I don't expect you to stop working out when we're not seeing each other, because then you won't make any progress.
Exactly. You're
you know what I mean?
over providing value. That's the same thing I would do. So not only are they training with me 2 to 3 times a week in person, I was giving them a program to do outside of the gym, training, nutrition, all that stuff. If they were enhanced, I would give them like hormone protocols to use, which is very frowned upon for Equinox. So I'd make sure that was discussed in person, nothing on paper. But you get the idea, right? You're oversharing and you're over giving value, which is like, you know, that person, you know, they might pay, you know, $1,000 for like a training package, but that $1,000 is valued way, way higher than some of the other, you know, trainers or programs, you know, at that gym.
Because you have to think, at the end of the day, like when it comes to your goals, money does not matter.
Exactly.
Like if I want the best knowledge possible to get my physique where I want it to be, I'm willing to spend any amount to help me achieve those goals, because the goals are that important to me.
Exactly. Like, think about, the reason why so many people invest thousands of dollars into taking steroids, because it's almost like, just from their perception, it's like a guaranteed result, even though half the time it's not. But they think in their head it's a guaranteed result. The value is already there, so I'm not going to think twice. I'm going to buy 10 vials of Trend, 10 vials of fucking Test, right? So when you have that same mindset to improving yourself and investing into a coach or a trainer, you're not going to think twice about spending that much money. It doesn't matter.
Not at all.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, like, how much do you want to achieve that goal? And honestly, this is something you probably came across multiple times, like when it came to people wanting to train with you, like in that whole discussion period of like what you're all about, what are your goals,
right.
How bad, you need to ask them, like how important is this goal to you?
How
bad do you want to achieve this? Like how long do you see yourself? You know what I mean?
Right, because if it's not a priority to that person, I can't help you.
No.
I literally can't help you. So even the people I coach today, I fucking grill them before they even get on my team. I'm like, okay, like how important is this truly to you? Because if you're gonna waste my time and not, follow a diet and not follow a training and get no progress from the time we're working with, not only did you waste your money, but I feel like I fucking failed this person, right? Because it's like, I gave you everything I could and you didn't put in the proper return.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like we can only do so much to help someone. At the end of the day, it's up to them to stay consistent and focus on what we give them.
Of course, right. And that's why you have to like literally deep down know that this is an extreme importance to you, right? Yeah, I think that's great, man. So in terms of like your own like coaching business and everything, like what are your goals as of now? I know you just got into it, but what are you really trying to get out of this?
Are we talking like long term,
short
term?
We'll talk short and long term. Let's say like first 3 months and let's say like the next year. Like, and I'm not just talking about like numbers in terms of like, financial freedom and everything, which I'm sure you're looking for as well, but just like quality of life, just like stuff like that.
I would say the biggest thing, so the biggest reason I told you before, biggest reason I'm getting into online coaching, why I'm doing online coaching is obviously one, what you just said, I value my time very much. And I also enjoy helping people very much.
Right.
I enjoyed helping myself. I feel fantastic. I want to give people that same exact feeling.
Right.
But I want to do it in the comfort, of my own home, on my own time.
Exactly.
I don't want to be glued to a gym like Equinox, for example. I don't want to be spending 12 hours a day there. Right. I want to still do what I love, but I want to do it on my own time.
Right. Exactly.
And realistically, 3 months from now, I want to be very consistent, with my content creation,
right. First steps right here.
Exactly. With my content creation, staying on top of clients, make sure I'm doing everything in my power to help them. I want them to feel as if, we're best friends. You know what I mean? Which I am. I'm your friend. I'm here to help you.
Right.
I will do everything in my power to help you. You just have to follow through and be really consistent.
Right. And what about the next year?
Within the next year, I realistically want to be financially free. I want to have all my time to myself. You know what I mean? I don't want to be, driving into work every day, for example. I want to work on my own time, and I want to have consistent clients.
Right.
And I know I can make that happen because what I learned at Equinox, I know for a fact I can apply into this.
100%.
By far.
100%. Because it's one thing where you're just making a paycheck, but it's another thing when you're literally like empowering somebody to do the things that you did to build yourself with your physique, right?
And you know how it feels too,
right?
You know what I mean? So when you can give that feeling to someone else, you're like, wow, I did that.
It's a really valuable feeling, man. It's insane. So you might start with a client for the first couple months, and they're making slow steps. They're getting into the diet and the training and everything. You might not see progress for like 8 weeks, but you'll get that first check-in in your email where it just clicks, and it's like you see that person, like you see the abs finally starting to show, you see the workout performance increasing, and they're well on their way to achieving that physique, and that's just like. It's just like there's no better feeling.
And
it's like
also,
you'll get those moments, And
it's also nice that you're not you don't have like these crazy strict rules to follow.
Right.
And like you don't have to be worried. Like obviously, for example, at Equinox, we technically couldn't write not training plans, nutrition plans.
No rules.
And here you can give them everything that they need to achieve their goals.
Right.
Everything.
Like nothing's held back. I mean, you know, like you even talked about, you know, we talked about steroids for like 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
You know, nobody's telling us we can't, hey, you can't talk about steroids.
Exactly.
Like you're in trouble.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's the freedom that we're all after, man. It's just so important that, you know, like you have that freedom, but you're literally able to actually help people and get them feeling the same way that you felt when you built your physique. And
Absolutely.
I think that's fantastic, man.
And like what I would tell anyone right now, like even people who don't, you know, even people who don't know if they want to start steroids, people who know for a fact they want to start, they just don't know when. I would say like me right now, like I haven't changed drastically since I started. I've changed a bit, but for example, like how I look now is 100%, I would tell to anyone, is achievable naturally.
Right.
If you put in the time and you really grind and you stay consistent, it is achievable naturally. But everybody has different goals. Like me, for example, I know the goal I have in my head. It's physically not achievable naturally.
Right. Yeah, people need to understand that. That's the same exact mentality I have with my physique, right? You know, maybe what I have right now is like, for some people, if they take 10 years, you know, maybe 20 years or something, they could achieve this naturally. Maybe with really good genetics, you could do it in like, you know, 3 years, right? Yeah. But that's like, you know, we're talking like specimen here. But, you know, like the physique we all want in our head, it's not attainable naturally. And we're not going to take one cycle and automatically look like this. It's going to take time and compounding. So, you know, people need to understand that.
Yeah. And that's another thing we talked about earlier is a lot of people, they don't really, people who don't know anything about gear, they expect, you know, you can just take it, you know, you're magically going to turn into a superhero after, you know, 3 months. It's not how it is. Right. At the end of the day, most people don't even know either how much people are actually on gear in the gym in general.
Oh, it's insane.
It is. If I honestly had to guess, I'd say at least half of gym-goers now, who want to do bodybuilding and, you know, want to get bigger, are on gear, and nobody wants to talk about it.
Exactly.
And they don't want to talk about it. I don't know why. Most people, you know, they're not honest about it. They're afraid to talk about it. You know, they'll blast 2,000. They'll blast 2 grams a year, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I'm natural."
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And it's just you're giving people a false perspective,
false hope, false expectations.
That's what I'm saying. Like you can't do that. Like you need to tell people what's possible naturally, so they can make the decision if they want to stay natural, and what's possible enhanced.
Exactly. And this is one of the reasons why I think you're going to go far with this, because you were like, and with your coaching business and everything, like you were like authentic enough to tell, you know, all these people watching this podcast, like, yes, I'm taking gear, but my physique is attainable completely naturally.
Absolutely.
If you just keep fucking grinding away, which, you know, I wouldn't argue that at all. But you know, that end result, like you said, you know, in 10 years or something, that's not going to be achievable naturally. But you're building a good amount of trust and, you know, respect amongst your audience because you're that transparent, right? Yeah. Which I think it's fantastic. Yeah, that's awesome, man. What do we got for time right now?
About an hour.
About an hour? Okay. Yeah, we can probably wrap this up. But Matt, man, do you have any like thing you want to say for, you know, closing, anything like that? Like, what's on your mind, man?
What's on my mind?
Bumping your cycle up?
Yeah.
Is that's the one thing we're gonna close out with?
The next one, not this one.
Okay.
But like if I honestly had to talk about like what my next cycle will be, I mean I already have it in mind. Obviously I'll cycle off for probably like 3 months. Okay. My next cycle, realistically, I am gonna stick with 500 tests. I'll keep the 50 handlebar. I'll probably throw in 500 primo.
Nice.
That's realistically going to be.
That's realistic. Yeah. There we go. All right. Perfect. So Matt's gonna step on a men's physique stage the next couple of years.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Perfect. All right, Matt. And where can we find you on Instagram, man?
So my Instagram is High Octane Fitness. Feel free to give me a follow, or if you have any questions about anything, just let me know.
Sweet. Yeah. This is solid. This is the This was the Equinox roast session. This is fantastic. Don't go to Equinox. Start your online coaching business. All right, we're good. It's perfect.